you're up.
Okay, review of and possible approval of the district employee health insurance bid. Are we halfway through the agenda?
Oh, it's 9 o'clock.
Do you want us to take a recess?
Cindy, why don't you pull it up, please? I did. You get a little bit of that.
Looks like a genie in a bottle. That's what I'm wondering. Is it perfume?
Let's see if Scott gets it. All right, it's on mine. All right.
Everyone's leaving, Greg.
See that? Everybody read that?
Don't take it
I'm going to stab.
In January, we have before I guess I start with that, we have an insurance review committee that meets annually, and we've been doing so for the last 4 or 5 years. I can give you a copy of that. It's on the website too. That has been meeting regularly, and part of that has been to, or the impetus for it was to navigate and negotiate healthcare reform. But through changes that have been brought about by Act 10 and the ability now to be able to go out and actively solicit different quotes for insurance bids, that is part of our role too. So what we did in January, we worked with a consultant, Bill Hines from Associated Financial Group out of La Crosse, and he helps us, number one, navigate the healthcare reform, but also took out our health insurance, employee health insurance out to bid, and we put it out to bid to different insurance companies in the area. They include Lutheran Health Traditions, Wisconsin Counties Association, WEA, and then also WPS. And we got the results from this insurance bid, and we kind of finalized those results with the Insurance Review Committee, I believe last Wednesday, so that we could bring back a formal recommendation to the full board as to what we would like to see. And if we just look down at the bottom here, the first column up here and the second column are our current health insurances, which is basically Gunderson Lutheran and Health Traditions, and those are 2 HMO plans, which basically have a limited network in the area, and an employee would either choose to be with Health Traditions or Gunderson Lutheran, and that's who you would doctor with for any of your needs. And as we look at that, those bids came back and actually pretty favorably at about a 5.74% increase. And if we look at the budget, what we used when we were going through that referendum process and anticipating costs, we had about an 8% increase built in for each of the next 3 years. So we came in well under that 8%. I will say at 8%, I thought was very conservative, and I still believe it's conservative after you talk to other people who've gotten insurance increases. There's many districts that are receiving above an 8% and even as high as 12 to 20% increases depending on what's going on in the district. And really when you look at increases or decreases or your cost of insurance, it's directly related to your experience, meaning how much usage you're having on a year. So in a given year. So when we look at this, that's really telling us that we've been kind of a healthy group over the last year more than anything. So that was for Gunderson Lutheran Health Traditions. Wisconsin Counties Association came in at a 4.54% reduction. I don't think anybody who's a budget manager would ever guess that they would see a 4.5% reduction potential in insurance estimate. And certainly you wouldn't budget for that. We received WEA's quote, and they came in at a 3.18% decrease, but we also have an IRP credit that we have still coming to us for approximately $66,000. So if we look at those IRP money credits, and we talked about IRP about 2 or 3 years ago, And again, that was part of healthcare reform and credits given back to the districts at that time. And we utilized that about 2 or 3 years ago. When we went through the bidding process 2 or 3 years ago, and we ended up with Health Traditions and Gunderson Lutheran, the savings that we saw by going with those insurance companies, even with the IRB credits that we had with WEA, still gave us a substantial savings, so we went with WEA. But if we look at those IRB credits, along with the 3.18% decrease, it shows about a 4.7% overall decrease, or a savings on our current plan of about $203,630. We have another plan sitting over here on the side that would show about a 5.37% decrease, but this plan is not quite apples to apples with these other plans, okay? The major difference being in the vision, in the area of optics. So the committee is recommending that we go with the WEA plan, which also is not a HMO. It's a point of service plan that has a statewide network. So any staff member could choose to doctor on one day with Gunderson Lutheran, or doctor with Health Traditions, or Marshfield, or whatever clinic is in that statewide network. So the value of the plan and the choices is very appealing to that of one in an HMO where you're just very limited. Because I can give you one instance where a staff member had a serious health issue, and the difference was between having open heart surgery the normal way, or having the option to go with the less invasive, which is now through the side. And fortunately, his first insurance company that person had chose, it did not allow them to have the less invasive surgery, but through some appeals, they were able to go to the other hospital, which allowed for it. That doesn't happen very often. So the choice is there. And the reason I bring that up is because that choice actually saves the district money, because if you have the less invasive procedure, you're going to have less cost to the whole procedure itself. So there is some justification that one of the, I guess the most significant difference as we're looking at the plans is that there is a $10 office copay visit. That for any time an employee goes to the office, there will be a $10 copay that they will have to factor into that. The drug plan is a little bit better in the area of really, I have to think of it, specialty drugs. It will offer a little bit more of a savings for those staff members that use specialty drugs. And when you sit on a committee like this and you think you have a good idea of how difficult life can be until you talk to somebody that has to purchase specialty drugs and of that nature, not just through one illness, but on a daily, monthly basis, it does get to be a significant impact on you. So that is a little bit of a savings for us. So the long and short is that with the bidding process, you know, we're very happy to see this 4.7% decrease. And Jan, your question earlier about are we going to be able to afford that $32,000? The overall savings of $203,000 on the plan, and keep in mind staff contribute 12.6 to each of their plans if they're on it. So of this $203,000, that 12.6% also has to factor into it. So the actual savings to the district will be slightly less. But the bigger part of that is the 8% increase that was built on a $4 million health insurance cost. So the combination of those two plans has really changes significantly what we were looking at for dollars when we looked at the referendum. Not only really wipes out a deficit that we had in 14-15, but goes a long way to changing what we were looking at in 15-16. I can tell you though, as you're looking at those numbers, it's a short-term fix to a long-term problem, because as you move out, you still have those drivers or that built-in systemic issue of funding in there. You know, that's still going to have to be overcome and addressed at some point in time in the future. But given the circumstances, this is really a good thing, regardless of that, whether that referendum passed or didn't pass. This is a good thing for the school district and the taxpayers, because the savings probably, even if the referendum had passed, would have given the school board the ability to make some decisions on what they wanted to levy or not levy, because certainly, I think we told the voters when we were advertising this referendum that if we didn't need the dollars, we wouldn't utilize them. So certainly when we're looking at this type of savings, that would have had a direct impact on those dollars also. So I guess we would look for, and I would also say there are 3 board members that sit on the committee. That's Judy Deming, Deb Boswell, and Mr. McMullen. So I guess as representatives and as a committee, we would like to ask that you consider making a motion to approve the switch from our current health plan to the WEA that will result in the savings of approximately $203,000 from what our current plan is.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then to approve the district employee health insurance bid as presented, the one by WEA.
Option 4 revised, right?
Do you want to specify it that way? The option 4,
WEA option 4 revised.
WEA option 4 revised. Thank you. Other questions or comments about that?
I think the thing to keep in mind is that, we're on a trend where we will be going, the one important thing is that also along with this, we had a 9% not-to-exceed guarantee for the following year. So that's a pretty big deal. Typically, we've always seen about a 10% not-to-exceed, so very comfortable with that 9% not-to-exceed also when we're looking at the 15-16 school year. We're not going to do this every time we go out to bid to get a 5% reduction. This will catch up to us sooner or later, okay? Hopefully later, but at some point in time you just won't see the savings. The other thing to keep in mind right now, in our hope is some of the things we've implemented have had an effect on reducing our usage, but I think the fact of the matter is, as I look at, the overall usage of, in general terms of what's going on with people. Right now, our health of our employees is pretty good. It does not take a lot of individual catastrophes, health-wise, in the district to really change the dynamics of what your usage is. And if you're in the healthcare business where you have been through that yourself, some of those things can get very expensive and change the outlook on your insurance very quickly.
Anything else to add from committee members? I will say, that committee, we have a lot of staff on it, and I don't know that I sit on any other committee where there's sort of the intensity of interest in what happens in a committee than in that insurance committee. That just affects their lives so immediately and directly, and with all the changes that they have experienced. We have been going to that meeting for several months with a certain element of fear and hope, but just a lot of input and a lot of credit to Greg for really being ambitious to look at options and to get people talking and to not just accept the status quo, and it paid off here. And yes, it's a short-term thing, but that was very welcome, and I think the employees were very relieved to see this. They're not going to have to go through a plan design. They've actually got more options on where they can go. And so I think that was a real bright spot for the coming year. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Greg. And I think the staff has been really good about understanding
Yes.
the needs of the district and what we need to do, and looking at insurance and why we look at it, and they've been very
They have
upfront
patient.
and patient with us. So, I think they see the benefits of what we're doing and trying to improve this and keep it as good as we can have it for the staff. We're really trying to do that. So this has paid off well for us this time.
Yes, absolutely.
Is this something that can happen every year then, the insurance stuff?
Well, as Greg said, we have the 9%. We won't increase more than 9% next year, so it's usually a 2-year.
It's usually a 2-year commitment.
Which is good. You think about it. I mean, some companies do go out there and change their insurance every year. It's nice to have 2 years where your doctor knows what you'll be doing. It's certainly a bit of security for our staff, certainly that way.
An insurance company want to know your risk. They're not going to dive in unless they have they're not going to give you a 4, whether it's 4 or 7, and it's interesting. It wasn't just one company. There were 2 companies. And actually, all of them came with a decrease, but they're not going to look at any group, especially the size of our group, and make a decision based on anything other than good knowledge. So they have to have a real comfort level of what your risk potential is before they just drop that number, because it's not in their interest. And we had conversations with WEA, about that. We don't want somebody to come in and give us a really good number right up front so we can pay for it. But I think they show that with that 9% not to exceed increase in the following year, that they're not in it for the first year, they're in it for the second year too. And it was any of these companies, and we had very, very happy with Gunderson Lutheran and Health Traditions. They're all in it for the long run. I mean, we have a lot of employees, so it's in their best interest to do the best job they can for us and give us the lowest, most competitive quote as possible. So.
But it has been observed by Greg, it is sort of a new landscape where it used to be WA forever. Now we've gone to bid twice in 3 years, and it may be where it is sort of a routine thing, putting it out for bid.
I don't know how you cannot until some things start to settle down, but it's good to keep that competitive edge whenever you're looking at something. I don't know that I'd recommend going every other year because of there is a cost to the district to do this too, to make the changes, to inform staff to change, and it's not a real easy change. It'll be add to an already busy May and June to get people signed up and ready to go with this. We probably have 200 to 300 people on our plan, so that will be another 3 or 4 night meetings to get people acquainted with it. So, but certainly the dollar decrease makes all that worth it.
Credit needs to be given where credit is deserved, and this is one of the positive impacts of Act 10. That the not negotiating the insurance, being able to work collaboratively, put it out to bid, it's been very beneficial for our district. So, thank you for your work, because it is more work, but it pays off financially.
Healthcare reform still looms, so
Yes,
we don't ever want to lose sight of healthcare reform and the Affordable Care Act, and we'll talk about that at a later time, not tonight. But this does have implications with that that help that, again, in the short term, not the long-term solutions, but certainly it brings a little relief when you talk about the Cadillac tax potential that's sitting with this too.
Because our premiums are decreasing, it helps us push that Cadillac tax at least out a little bit.
So we do have the motion and the second to approve the insurance bid as presented. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and so the health insurance bid is approved as presented.